With so much going on in the news today and what a lot of people are feeling in terms of fear, I wanted to come on and have a little conversation about, what is the relationship to fear with you in your life? And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what my relationship to fear is for me in my life, and maybe this might help shed some light or give you some insights into your relationship to fear. And I remember there was a time in my life when, and I don't know if you remember the brand that was No Fear. And I used to wear this hat. I'd go in the gym and work out, and this was when I was in my early 30s, and I'd wear this hat that said No Fear. And part of that for me was the no fear of how I was going about my life and the choices that I was making. It's like, just do it, right? Like, don't even let fear be a factor. And what I learned a lot about during that time, number one, is it really empowered me in some way. But the other thing is how I was really pushing fear down, and I was really pushing fear aside so that I didn't have to deal with the fears that I was really having in my life by just kind of bullying over those fears. And so here I am today in this other place in my life, many years later, and my relationship to fear has changed in so many ways. And one of the biggest turning points for me in my relationship to fear and how I began to see it very different and begin to experience it and keep it in a different place in my life was back in 2008. And in 2008, I made a trek up Mount Whitney, and this was my second attempt to summit. And the first attempt to summit, I didn't make it to the top because people in the party got altitude sickness and we had to head back because of the time and blah, 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 blah. And because not only that, because they were sick. But the second go around that I did, I was determined that I was going to make it to the top. And at that time, I was hiking with about 5 other hikers, but by the time I got to the top, I ended up with just one hiker, and that hiker was my cousin, Fred. And so as we decided to come down the mountain, we're coming down the mountain, and the crazy thing is that I'm afraid of heights, right? And here I am up, 14,000 feet, and I'm afraid of heights, and Teresa, what are you doing there? So anyway, we're coming down the mountain. What I realize as we're coming down is that my cousin has a little bit of altitude sickness. And in his altitude sickness, what can happen is it can make you kind of loopy, and then you're not very clear-headed. And so in coming down the path, we came to this point, this kind of fork on the mountain where we weren't quite sure which way to go. And I was in the lead, and I turned and I asked him, I said, Fred, which way do we go? And he looked at me and he says, I don't know, Teresa. It was this moment of fear that just ran through my body of, wow, he doesn't have the wherewithal to help me navigate this, and I'm really not good at navigation, and it's all on me. And not only is it all on me to get us going to where we need to go, since we're so far high up on this mountain, we had to, get down before the weather started to change and before it got dark, but also that I realized that I was so high up. I hadn't really realized it in a very cognitive way of like what I was. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but just the realization of how high up I was struck me in that moment. So I had these two things come over me, and that was this fear of heights and the fear of potentially being lost. So I decided to make a choice to kind of recon where I needed to go, and then realized, okay, I know my way on this path. So I proceeded on the path. He's behind me. And going into this journey down the mountain, this feeling of fear came over me like you couldn't imagine. And it was so big that it made me like not want to proceed, even though I knew that I was going to continue to proceed because I needed to get down that mountain. But I don't know if you've ever been in that state of feeling fear so big in your body to where it actually can stop you. And that's what the feeling I was having, even though I knew I wasn't going to stop. And in that moment, I said to myself, okay, Teresa, you got to figure this out. You got to figure out a way to get down this mountain with not having that fear run you. You have got to figure out a way to navigate this, because you have this person behind you who's not quite in his right frame of mind because of the altitude, and it's on you. And what I remembered a story that an astrologer, a mentor of mine, had shared with me. And I won't go into the deep story, but what I do want to say is what the story taught me is how to be with fear. That I can be with fear in a few different ways. I could be at the effect of fear. I can allow it to dictate my choices, dictate how I'm feeling, dictate the survival instinct and the flight, fight, or freeze that I'm feeling in my body. I could try to control the fear, and in controlling the fear, ultimately, it was going to be a stressful situation. The fear definitely was just going to become bigger because I'm trying to control it. Or I can allow the fear to be my companion. I can walk with the fear. I can have the fear by my side, not trying to control it and not letting it control me. And of course, as you probably can guess, that was a choice that I made, is I allowed the fear to be present because it's just what it was. It needed to be present because my feelings were real. And so in that, I was able to walk down this mountain without feeling at the effect of fear and yet having fear present. So what's the moral of this story and why am I telling it? I'm telling it because we're in a time right now in what we're seeing in the world, especially with the virus that's going on, that there's a lot of fear for some people that's being animated right now, and how important it is for us to check in with how that fear is in our body. Because if we try to control the fear that we're feeling, we're going to be at the effect of it. If we allow the fear to come in and take us over, we will be at the effect of it. And as we know, the law of magnetic attraction, what we plug into will become part of the vortex of our reality. So it's not about pushing it out and saying it doesn't exist. We need to be aware of it. We need to take precautions in terms of keeping ourselves healthy. And these are things that we should do anyway, but not allowing ourselves to go into victim around it. Because if we go into victim, we will become victimized by it in some way. I'm not saying you're going to get it. It's not what I'm saying here. But I'm saying you'll find a way, because that's how it works. That's how the victim works. It's insidious. It'll find a way to have you feel victimized by it, whether it's because you turn the TV on, whether because somebody you know has it, whether because it's something that you want to go to is canceled, something like that. So this is very important for us to really pay attention to what our relationship to fear is and how that can run us and how that can dictate our flight, fight, or freeze mechanism in our body, and how it can even affect our health. So consider what I'm saying here and think about what that is for you. What is your relationship to fear? It's impossible to not have fear as part of the human experience. It is. But it is so important how we relate to it, or don't relate to it, or try to push it out. So I hope this was of some help for you, and thank you for sharing this time for me. Namaste.